She was more than a widow. She was a fighter, a mother, and a symbol of courage. This is the story of Pauline Lumumba, the woman who stood tall when empires tried to break her. In this video, we will explore her full life history, from her humble beginnings in the heart of Congo to her powerful role in shaping African resistance. If you're interested in African history, women's empowerment, or the legacy of Patrice Lumumba, stay tuned. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss stories like this. Pauline Lumumba was born on January 1st, 1937 in a small village called Wembonyama in the Sankuru region of what was then the Belgian Congo. Life was simple but hard. The Congo was under colonial rule and the Congolese people had little freedom. So Pauline grew up in a traditional family, learning the values of strength, dignity, and community. She didn't go to fancy schools, but she was smart and observant. She saw how colonialism affected her people, how families were broken, how women were treated unfairly, and how the land was exploited. These early experiences shaped her view of the world. So as a teenager, Pauline moved to the city of Stanleyville, now called Kijagani. It was there that she met a young man named Patrice Lumumba. He was passionate, intelligent, and full of dreams for a free Congo. So Pauline was drawn to his energy and vision. They fell in love and soon they got married. But this was no ordinary love story. Their union would become part of Congo's fight for independence, as some of us know it today. So Pauline wasn't just a wife, she was a partner in the struggle. Pauline Lumumba became Pauline Lumumba when she married Patrice Lumumba in 1951. She was just 14 years old and Patrice was 26 as at that time. Their marriage wasn't just about love, it was about partnership, purpose, and a shared dream for a free Congo. So Patrice Lumumba was already a rising star in the Congolese politics. He spoke boldly against colonialism and believed in unity across tribes and regions. Pauline stood by him even when things got dangerous. She wasn't just a quiet wife in the background. She was active, alert, and deeply involved. As Patrice traveled across the country giving speeches and organizing protests, Pauline managed the home and raised their children. They had 4 kids together and she made sure they were safe, fed, and educated even when money was tight and threats were everywhere. In 1960, Congo gained independence from Belgium. Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister of the newly independent nation. Pauline became the first lady, but her life didn't suddenly become glamorous. Instead, it became more difficult. So Patrice's leadership was controversial. He wanted Congo to be truly free, not just in name, but in reality. They meant cutting ties with colonial powers and building a strong united country. But not everyone agreed with him. Foreign governments, rival politicians, and even military leaders began plotting against him. Pauline saw the danger coming. She watched her husband struggle with betrayal, threats, and political pressure. She stayed strong, encouraging him to keep fighting. She believes in his vision even when the world turned against him, Their home was often under surveillance. Pauline had to protect her children and keep them calm while chaos brewed outside. She was more than a first lady. She was a shield, a strategist, and a silent warrior. In September 1960, just months after independence, Patrice Lumumba was removed from power. He was arrested by the rival forces and eventually handed over to Katangan authorities, who were backed by foreign powers. So Pauline Lumumba was devastated. She tried everything to save her husband. She wrote letters, spoke to diplomats, and even begged the United Nations to intervene, but no one listened. On January 17, 1961, Patrice Lumumba was executed. He was only 35 years old as at that time, so his death shocked the world. But for Pauline, it was personal. She had lost her husband, her partner, and the father of her children. But Pauline didn't hide. She didn't run away. She stood up. Just days after his death, Pauline led a powerful protest in Kinshasa. She walked barefoot through the streets, dressed in black with her children by her side. She marched to the United Nations office demanding justice and recognition for her husband. The image of Pauline barefoot, grieving but unbroken, became a symbol of resistance. She showed the world that Congolese women were strong, proud, and fearless. Her march wasn't just about Patrice. It was about Congo. It was about dignity. It was about truth. After the protest, Pauline faced even more challenges. She was watched by the government, harassed by the police, and denied basic rights. But she never gave up. She continued to speak out, even when it was dangerous. She raised her children alone, teaching them about their father's legacy. She made sure they knew the truth that Patrice Lumumba died fighting for justice and that his dream was still alive. Pauline refused to remarry. She said, "I had only one husband and I will never replace him." Her loyalty was deep and her love was eternal. What a virtuous woman. So in the years that followed, Pauline became a quiet icon. She didn't seek fame or fortune. She lived modestly, but her story inspired generations. She was invited to speak at events, honored in books and documentaries, and remembered as one of Africa's bravest women. Her strength became not from power, but from pain. She turned her grief into action and her silence into a voice that echoed across the continent. After Patrice Lumumba's death, Pauline Lumumba entered a new chapter of her life, one filled with silence, struggle, and survival. She was only 24 years old, a widow with 4 children, living in a country that had betrayed her husband. The government didn't support her. There were no pensions, no protections, no honors. Instead, she was watched, followed, and sometimes threatened. But Pauline didn't break. She focused on her children, determined to raise them with love and dignity. She moved from Kinshasa to Brazzaville, across the Congo River, seeking safety. Life was hard. She had no job, no income, and no political power. But she had strength. She taught her children about their father's ideals, which was freedom, unity, and justice. Pauline also became a quiet activist. She spoke at small gatherings, met with African leaders, and kept Patrice's memory alive. She didn't shout, but her presence spoke volumes. People respected her for her loyalty, her courage, and her grace. In the 1970s and 80s, Congo went through more political changes. Dictators came and went. The country struggled with corruption, poverty, and war. Through it all, Pauline stayed true to her mission: protect her family, honor her husband, and serve her people. She refused to marry. She said, "I had only one husband and I will never replace him." Her love was not just romantic, it was revolutionary, She believed in Patrice's dream and she carried it in her heart every day. As her children grew older, they began to speak out too. They became writers, activists, and thinkers. Pauline had passed on the torch and the flame kept burning. She lived a quiet life, but her story echoed across Africa. She was invited to events, honored by historians, and remembered by those who still believed in Lumumba's vision. Pauline Lumumba didn't seek revenge. She sought truth. She didn't chase power. She chose peace, and in doing so, she became a symbol, not just a grief, but a grace. Pauline Lumumba's legacy is powerful, even though she never held office or led a movement. Her strength came from her silence, her loyalty, and her unshakable dignity. In the years after Patrice's death, many people began to see Pauline as a symbol of African resilience. She was featured in documentaries, books, and articles. Her barefoot march became one of the most iconic images in the African history. Historians call her the quiet flame of Congo. Activists call her Mama Lumumba. And young women saw her as a role model, a woman who stood tall in the face of tragedy. In 2002, Congo finally recognized Patrice Lumumba as a national hero. Pauline was invited to ceremonies where she stood beside her children, proud and composed. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. She simply stood like she always did. Her story was taught in schools, shared in speeches and honored in museums, but Pauline never sought fame. She lived modestly in a small home surrounded by family and memories. In 2014, Pauline Lumumba passed away at the age of 77. Her death was quiet, but her legacy was loud. Leaders across Africa paid tribute to her. Newspapers called her the soul of Congo, and her children vowed to keep her story alive. So today, Pauline Lumumba is remembered not just as Patrice's wife, but as a hero in her own right. She showed that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks barefoot through the streets, holding the hands of children, demanding justice with quiet dignity. Her life teaches us that love can be revolutionary, that grief can be powerful, and that woman, especially African women, are the backbone of history. And you see, Pauline Lumumba didn't write books or lead armies, but she changed the world one step at a time. Pauline Lumumba's story is not just a chapter in Congo's history. It's a lesson for the world. She lived through love, war, betrayal, and loss. But through it all, she remained strong, graceful, and true to her values. She didn't have political power. She didn't lead armies or write manifestos, but she led with her heart. She stood for justice, for family, and for truth. And in doing so, she became a symbol of African resilience. Her life reminds us that behind every great leader, there is often a quiet force, someone who holds the family together, who carries the pain, and who keeps the dream alive. Pauline was that force for Patrice Lumumba, and when he was gone, she became that force for Congo. She showed us that grief can be powerful, that silence can speak louder than words, and that dignity is a form of resilience. Even today, her legacy continues. Young women across Africa look to her as a role model. Historians study her life, artists paint her image, and her children carry her story forward. So what can we learn from Pauline Lumumba? We learn that love is not weakness, it is strength. We learn that loyalty is not passive, it is powerful. And we learn that even in the darkest times, one person's courage can light the way. Pauline Lumumba walked barefoot through the streets of Kinshasa, not to make a scene, but to make a statement. She didn't scream, she didn't fight, she simply walked with pain in her heart and pride in her soul. And that walk changed everything. As we remember her today, let's honor her not just as a widow, but as a warrior. Not just as a mother, but as a movement. Not just as a memory, but as a message. A message that says dignity matters, truth matters, and women matter. In 1937, Pauline Lumumba was born in Wemboyama, Belgian Congo. In 1951, she got married to Patrice Lumumba. In 1960, she becomes the first lady of the newly independent Congo. In 1961, her husband, Patrice Lumumba, was assassinated. Pauline led barefoot protest. So, by 1961 to 1970s, she lives in exile in Brazzaville, raising her children. So, from 1980s to year 2000s, she quietly honored across Africa. She participates in memorials. So by year 2002, Patrice Lumumba was officially declared a national hero. By year 2014, Pauline Lumumba passed away at the age of 77. So Pauline Lumumba's legacy lives on in the hearts of millions. In Congo, her story is taught in schools. Across Africa, she remembered as a symbol of strength and loyalty. And around the world, her image, walking barefoot, dressed in black, remains one of the most powerful symbols of peaceful protest. Her life reminds us that history isn't just shaped by presidents and generals. It is shaped by mothers, widows, and women who refuse to be silenced. Today, African women in politics, activism, and education often cite Pauline Lumumba as an inspiration. Her courage continues to ripple through generations. So as we close this video, let's carry our story forward. Let's speak her name, let's honor her work, and let's remember that even in silence, there is strength. Thank you for watching this tribute to Pauline Lumumba. If our story moved you, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories from African history. Till I come your way again, bye for now.